Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Top Cyber Pro podcast. I'm founder and CEO of TopCyberPro.com, Jim West, and I have another guest with us today, Professor Rashid, who is going to talk about a lot of different topics today because this gentleman right here is an expert in several different domains within cybersecurity, and we're going to talk about some exciting stuff that he's doing in the cybersecurity space. So, without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to the professor.
Okay. Hello. Thank you for having me, and glad to be on your podcast.
And so, Professor Rashid, how long have you been working within cybersecurity and in the technical world, like
Oh,
ballpark?
okay. Oh, I'm now trying to think. You've slightly caught me on my off guard a little bit here. I would say going circa 35 years is probably it. So the story here really is that I've started to work in this before I knew this was really effectively a career potentially. I was at university, and me and two friends, I mean, we just got into computers like we did at that point. And me and two friends used to run this kind of pro bono service effectively. Viruses were just very new. So the brain virus had just come out, and viruses were popping up everywhere. People were having loads of problems with their computers. So they would bring them to us, and we would just kind of clean them up for free for them.
Uh-huh.
And in some cases also collect the virus to just study it. So one of my friends who was doing this with me, he was a bit of a collector. He liked to study viruses. So really, that's kind of where I kind of started out. It was much later that I understood that there was actually a career and a job in this. We
Yeah,
were
you can
just doing
actually
this
make a
because it
good
was
bit of
interesting.
money doing this kind of
Yeah,
work.
yeah.
It's kind of interesting. It seems like you and your friend were doing like really early days digital forensics by, analyzing the
Yeah,
viruses and so
yeah,
forth.
yeah, yeah.
I know you have a lot of expertise in several different areas, but one of the areas I definitely want to dive into with you is this trust, identity, and privacy. I don't think that there's not enough awareness. I know there's a lot of resources if you're looking for it online, but I think the general public has this general consensus of, well, if I'm not doing anything wrong, I don't care, and they don't realize how important that data is. With privacy data and individuals' data, how it can be collected and used in sometimes in negative ways against them and their interests in the long term. What's your knowledge and expertise and your perspective? What can you share with us and anyone watching about, privacy and then trust identity?
So, I mean, this is a debate that happens in all the time, and let's just, also accept that the data that we share with online services, in many ways, it drives the digital economy. We use data, share our data to do a range of things online all the time. There are really good uses of the data. So, for example, we went through a pandemic and we did contact tracing, but without impacting privacy in any substantial ways because we had good privacy mechanisms. So the argument that I personally have never been comfortable with is when people say, "Well, if I have nothing to hide, it's fine." Doesn't I have nothing to hide, but doesn't mean that everyone needs to know everything about me at every
Yes.
point in time. And there are things that, for example, I am very happy to share with my doctor that I am not happy to share on this podcast,
Yes.
or with my family that I'm not happy to share with my friends, or the other way around. And I think it is this kind of contextualness of privacy that is very very important. But also I think what's quite significant here is that it is also a choice. We should be able to
Yes.
choose how much and what we want to share and what we don't. We are seeing a lot of this actually play out right now very publicly. There was a whole load of debate about 18 months ago in this area with regards to end-to-end encryption and whether government should be able to look into that both in the UK and in the EU. And actually, there is a center that I had in my job at University of Bristol, which is a national center on privacy, harm reduction, and adversarial influence online in the UK. So we did an actual evaluation. Some of the team members did an actual evaluation of some of the tools that were being proposed and highlighted how they would compromise fundamental civil liberties. We are also seeing this play out more recently with the Apple Advanced Data Protection system and so on. But the net result of this is that if we do not get this right, what we end up is creating privacy haves and have-nots. Now, Apple has withdrawn it from the UK, but the net result of that is that now UK users have less privacy protection. So while they are compliant with the legal requirement, actually in the end, the users lose out.
Wow. You said something there on the end about that center that you're working with about adversarial influence online. Could you give us a little bit more context and detail to what that is?
Yeah, so I mean, there are lots of things that come under that umbrella. We are a large center. There are around 23 universities and 160 researchers who are involved in this work. So the obvious example here would be misinformation and disinformation, and how, for example, people's kind of perceptions of what is actually happening out there can be influenced. But there is also issues where particular technologies or platforms or particular online interactions create echo chambers in itself, where you don't have any kind of dissenting voice challenging your view. And then of course there is the whole space of what is sometimes historically called dark patterns, but more kind of manipulative design or deceptive design, really, which effectively nudges users towards doing things that that suddenly are not in their best interest in that regard. So there is all these things, and there is a number of researchers in that center that study this kind of area.
A lot of attention, with this fast emergence of all of this LLMs and generative AI, because before we worried about like the deep fakes, and now AI is making videos and images and code and so much generative content that it's only going to lead to better. I mean, as every day gets better and better, right? And so there's a lot of concern about, can we even trust when we see, without the use of like movie CGI, people are able to use a AI system to generate videos of celebrities, politicians talking and lip syncing, even real video footage, but replacing the
Yeah.
audio with their, voice saying whatever they wanted to say. What do you believe our future is going to be? Is that when we turn on the news, we're going to have to look for like a little, like, what to do with the movies with the ratings, where it's PG-13 or NC-17 rated R, where our news is going to have an emblem of some kind of accreditation or certification that it is legitimate live news, that it's not been tampered or filtered, or news articles. How are we going to come up with a way to where we can trust it? Because honestly, we can't trust the general population to actually read the whole article, because most people just read the headlines, if that. Usually they listen to a voice tell them what to think. But beyond that, let's say someone's just going through the news and reading just the headlines. We know the headlines are just made to make you want to click the
Mhm.
website, but they're never going to read the whole article. They may read the first paragraph, the second paragraph, and then they stop, right? I think very few people in the population will read the entire article and then think about what they just read, like have some critical thinking, and then look at the sources and go to maybe those sources for those reports or wherever that information that was, reported on in the article, read the actual source where the information came from. I think very, very few people do this. And so what's the future then? Because obviously people want it easy. They want to be, like fast food, they want their fast information, but at the same time, instead of like being in an echo chamber or hearing the same political views that the all the AI devices that are listening to us and making our lives better, but at the same time, it's only feeding us the news feeds that align to our own initial beliefs. We never have that dissenting opinion or seeing the other side, like hearing the other side of the story. What is the answer, in your opinion, do you think that we need in the future for news articles, and for informative sources to kind of give that assurance to people that, okay, this has been either vetted, validated, certified, and there's no AI and there's nothing manipulating this? What do you think is the potential answer for this?
I don't think there is a simple answer is the problem. I think the issue of what do we trust, how do we verify, and how do we really get that assurance that what we are seeing is really the reality, is going to be the big challenge. I mean, let's take this podcast.
Mhm.
How do people really know this is me and I'm speaking to you? They obviously have trust in your platform, and they think you would have sort of you would have verified that it is me, and things like that. But the reality is that we are already in that space where we can not easily validate that what we are seeing is in fact what happened. but also the reverse of it, that it's also easy to then claim that what is being shown is actually potentially fake news and things like that. And we have seen, very kind of prominent people make those kind of claims. So I think the challenge is going to be that we are going to need to do a lot of work to provide that kind of assurance. I think there is always these challenges with these kind of markers, for example, of something being verified. There are sort of news organizations that do that. They, for example, the BBC here in the UK, they run a BBC verified kind of
Okay.
service and things like that, where they would sort of fact check a lot of the sort of statements that are being made about a particular very high profile incident. But I mean, in terms of badges and things like that, we already know. For example, when we go online and people are asked to check the lock on the
Yeah.
on the
SSL.
browser, but actually the lock is the visual indicator. If you ask even a lot of technical experts, dare I say even many cybersecurity experts, and this is not in any way meant as a critical thing, most people won't be able to click on it and be able to look at it and go, oh, yes, that certificate tells me something and it is really, really correct, right? We are taking a lot of that on trust. And
On
we are
trust.
taking that on trust because we think that the browser providers have done a good job of verifying this, and the infrastructure behind this is, solid enough to do that. And I think we are going to have to do a lot of work to be able to verify the information, or to provide that kind of trust to the people consuming the information. Because let's face it, it's not the user's job to go and check 10,000 references. They should be able to trust the kind of good rigorous media to be able to provide that assurance. But it is I expect that this is going to be a challenge for us, both in research and in industry for the foreseeable future.
Wow. Thank you for sharing your opinions and perspective on that. I really appreciate that, Professor. I want to move on and talk about a couple of the businesses that you are a founder and director of. The first one that's got my attention is Hacktonics. So, can
Yes.
you first tell me why Hacktonics, the purpose and why of creating and founding this business, and tell us a little bit about what it does?
Okay, so the purpose behind this is that a large body of my work and colleagues who work with me is on security of critical infrastructure. So this is, systems such as water treatment and distribution systems, power plants, and even manufacturing environments and so on. These are the systems that bring critical services to our
Yes.
homes. Now, there is also a bit of a story here that it was back in I think circa 2010 that we started to look into this. And I'm, by the way, an electrical engineer by background, so I have some
Okay.
understanding of these things.
Well, for industrial
And
controls, it's a good background to
yeah,
have.
industrial control, right? So this is all about industrial control. But we started to look into this because we realized that there was very little security built into these systems. And there are challenges that these systems are built to last a very long time. They had at that time little security built into them because they were supposed to be behind barbed wire and the devices were very proprietary. But around by 2010, we also started to notice that they were connected to the internet and you can't easily replace them also because if you're for example a large infrastructure provider such as a big national level rail infrastructure, you are going to need a long program, hundreds of millions of pounds, to replace your infrastructure, retrain your staff, revalidate the
Mhm.
safety of that infrastructure. Right. So we started looking into it. And at that point, even some people said to me, why are you doing this? I mean, this is old systems. Nobody cares about them. Right. But what was quite interesting, and I don't say this with pride, last year I actually gave evidence to the House of Commons Select Committee on cyber resilience
Nice.
of UK's critical infrastructure on this topic, right? And it wasn't, I don't say this with pride. I think it was just a degree of sort of, kind of vindication of the kind of research foresight that, you have to think about these things well ahead. You have to think about these things 15 years ahead. So Hacktonics has come about because we also see that there is a big, big skills gap in this area. While there is a general shortage
Huge.
of cybersecurity skills, the people who can actually do security analysis or penetration testing of industrial control systems are much fewer. And given that the specialist skills that are needed, specific technologies, specific networking protocols, but the other issue is that because these are cyber physical systems, you have to be able to touch them to do stuff with them. And a lot of stuff that you otherwise do ends up being just on a screen. So Hacktonics is a startup which uses specialist equipment that we built at University of Bristol, which is effectively an industrial control system security in a box.
Yes.
So this box sits on the person's desk when they train, and they get a chance to have hands-on experience with actual industrial equipment, run attacks and defenses
Like
against that.
interfacing with PLCs.
Yes, absolutely. PLCs, human machine interfaces, and so on. So that's really has been the core purpose, that we wanted to train basically more and more people in industrial control systems security, and there is a demand from industry in this area as well. And interestingly, again, what's going on geopolitically at the moment, and with increasing kind of state level, interference in infrastructures, it has become even more critical that we have
Yes.
people in this area, because there can be very large scale outages.
So what are some of the, so and if you want to, do you want to show the website and maybe step us through some sections of it? I don't mean to put you on the spot, but is that something you would like to do? Or we could just talk about, like, is there like training that you offer? Is there courses? Is it in person or can they do it online with Hacktonics?
So I mean, I think it'll take me some time to go onto the
Oh, no
website, and
worries
maybe
then.
it's best if I just talk about it. So no, the training is in person, but if we actually maybe I can go on the
Let
website,
me do this.
because that
I'm just
might
going to
be
set you as the host, and if you'd
okay.
like to
Thank you.
share your
Yeah,
screen, and then and like I
yeah,
said, if you don't mind
yeah,
kind of stepping us through the site, and
yeah,
I think
yeah,
it's wonderful. While you're doing that, I'll just make a
yeah,
statement here.
yeah, yeah,
OT and when it comes to the OT networks, operational technology and SCADA, ICS controls, etc. There's not enough attention, and these are our water systems, our power systems, transit systems that use these type of devices, chemical facilities, manufacturing plants. All of these things use these type of systems, and the professor said, these systems were made to run for like decades and decades. These components, and what they're finding is that over the years, as we interconnected the internet to these things, and there's legitimate reasons to interconnect the internet, because first thing most people would say is, well, then just disconnect the internet. But the reason why they connect these to the network is because engineers can't always be everywhere where all these components are. So sometimes having them in an office building where they can take all the data, the analytics, and crunch the numbers at a central location is makes more business sense. But you still have that widespread risk of all those devices that could be compromised. So this is a very important thing that the professor is working on with several other folks in the world to try to secure these networks and systems. So I see you got the page up, so I'll turn it back over to
yeah.
you, Professor.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is really just, I mean, we are going through a redesign of the website
Yes.
at the moment, but these boxes that you see on the site, these are the ones that we build. So the training is hands-on. It is in person, in the sense that, people really get to touch the equipment
Yes.
and work with it directly. Interestingly, at the moment, we've also been working on, so one of the other things that we identified was that if you are doing any regular IT security, you've got things like Kali Linux.
Yes.
You can download a platform, you can go and do that. So over the last 3 months ish, we have been building a Linux platform, which is specifically for industrial control system security, rather kind of intuitively called Linux. So Linux plus ICS,
Yes.
really, which we are going to be releasing at the end of this month. But what you can see here on the site is that we are actually running free
Ah,
boot camps in the southwest of England, because we were funded to specifically do that, where we will actually be, helping people who want to get into industrial control system security have a hands-on experience with both using the Linux platform, but also have some experience with our training kit. But typically we run a range of courses. These are only exemplars on the website. But for instance, we see often IT security professionals who want to get into ICS security and want to get some experience. We also help people kind of learn about how do you go about building a security baseline of an industrial
nice.
control systems environment. Attacks are a popular thing. People want to learn about them because pen testing is a key element. But actually, it's the last one that we often find is very popular. because there are loads of safety engineers and
Yeah.
they want to not compromise safety of their systems. Often organizations come to us because they want to train their safety engineers into understanding more about security. And also those people have a really good understanding of control systems, but they know less about security. So this is really what we do in this area. But part of course, it's a business. It is meant to provide a commercial service. But there is a really fundamental mission here as well, because ultimately we are building more and more complex infrastructures, and if we don't have skilled people who know how to protect them, there will be serious challenges
Yes.
down
And
the
that's
line.
always
And
at risk.
yeah, absolutely.
I did notice those free workshops. Those are pretty like 3 hour workshops that are free and several
Yes.
locations around the Bristol
Yeah.
area. So if you want
Yeah.
to go to their website, which I will have the link in the description below. So don't Google, you can just click right there in the description and then we'll have the link to Hacktonics. And if you are in the UK and around any of those cities on those dates, sign up and then sit in
Yeah.
one of these classes, get some
Yeah.
hands-on, some very
Yeah.
specialized, unique
Yeah.
hands-on experience. So I'm really excited
Yes.
you guys
Yeah.
offer that. So thank you for offering those
Yeah.
free
Yeah.
workshops. I
Yeah.
want to kind of segue over because you have another business. So as if you weren't already
Yeah.
busy enough, is this gentleman has found time to create another business that he's the founder director of, and it's called CyBOK with a capital BOK CIC. So can you break down the acronym for us? And again, same
Yeah.
question: what is the purpose for this, and what do you do? What is the mission?
So CyBOK stands for Cybersecurity Body of Knowledge. It's a program that has been running since 2017, and it is funded by the UK's National Cybersecurity Program. So the purpose of this was at that time that more mature disciplines like physics, mathematics, actually even software engineering have their own bodies of knowledge, but cybersecurity does not have one. Right. So the goal was to create a rigorous resource whereby people who wanted to build training programs, whether in universities or in industry, could come and use that as a basis to see what would be the foundational knowledge that could be provided. Now, the focus here is foundational. So I'm also an academic. My latest research topic doesn't make it into it. It is about what the community accepts as foundational knowledge. So we
Yes.
did a lot of work, workshops, information gathering at the start, and as to what would be covered within that. And from there, we identified what would be 19 knowledge areas that would cover CyBOK. It has since grown. There are 21, and there are also some supplementary guides. But the bottom line here is that this is a resource that is created by over 120 experts around the world. I lead the program, but there are other colleagues who help me with the editorial work. But there are, a lot of colleagues, authors, reviewers, and many, many more community members, who have given their time in reviewing and providing feedback on this. But the key purpose is that it's a free resource. So one of the things that we want to do is we want to actually demystify cybersecurity. Now,
Yes.
it's great for me; it gives me a job, but we are not going to solve that cyber workforce gap if we keep this kind of closed all the time. And one of the things is that often people do send me an email or drop me a note on LinkedIn and say, well, I got into cyber because I found CyBOK and I could access all this information for free because everything is free. Everything
Okay.
we do is available for free. All the knowledge areas are free, all the resources around it. The community helps contribute and build resources, practical resources. So there are case studies, there are hands-on practicals, okay, that you can do. You can download everything for free. So the only requirement we always have is that if people are working in the as part of this program, what they produce is freely available to anybody around the world. You don't even have to use your data. We come back to privacy. You don't have to go and register to access it. It's free at the point of access. You go, you
Wow.
click, you download. We don't even have trackers on our website,
Look at
right?
that. Don't even have to register.
So, But that's really what the key thing here is. So the CIC is really a community interest company. It is a
Okay.
not-for-profit organization. As CyBOK has been going now for about 7 8 years, we have to think about what is its kind of long-term future. And we have set up this community interest company as think of it as it's not a charity, but it's a not-for-profit organization whereby whatever revenue it will generate through providing services or products out there, it will invest back into maintenance of CyBOK and its core mission of effectively democratizing cybersecurity knowledge
As the
and bringing more
technology
people.
changes, laws
Yeah,
change, you have to change
yeah.
with it. Yeah.
Absolutely. So, and the other thing to kind of note is that CyBOK is actually used quite heavily in the UK in the sense that if a student goes and does what is a certified degree as certified by the National Cybersecurity Center at undergraduate or master's level, it is based on CyBOK. So it really underpins kind of national standard in terms of higher education. It is also used in some of the kind of school level programs, but a number of colleagues internationally are using it as well. So I often sort of find this quite surprising because we don't know who is using it. So, people often tell me, "Hey, I have been using CyBOK," and I go, "Oh, that's really great, but you should have told us about this because unless you tell us, we do not know." So, yeah.
So thank you for sharing the information about those two businesses and organizations. And of course, folks, descriptions, the links are below. So save yourself the
Yeah.
Google search. Just 2 clicks away, you're going to jump on those sites and it's free. Free resources, free labs. I mean,
Yeah.
wow, thank you for giving such a huge, tremendous gift of information to the world. I want to shift to one last question in our technical discussion because being that you're in the UK and all your work is centered in the UK, and of course I'm based on a lot of the US like NIST, DISA, a lot of the different three-letter agencies and so forth in our world of like risk management framework and all these other standards that are from the US side. In the UK, like if, for example, let's say NIST, right? The National Institute of Standards and Technology. NIST has a lot of technical publications, special publications.
Mhm.
They cover risk management framework, the NICE framework. They get all these frameworks. They're real big on
Yeah.
frameworks, right?
Yeah.
What would you say the equivalent in the UK is for like a National Standards and Technology Institute? What would that be in the UK?
So there are a number of institutes that set sort of standards in this area. There is, of course, the British Standards Institute. There is also professional bodies like the IET and British Computer Society. But I mean, cybersecurity is an international challenge. So actually, we also use stuff that comes from NIST and other areas. But I think the key organization in the UK is the National Cybersecurity Center. That is the National Technical Authority. They do not set standards, okay, but they provide the kind of general guidance and principles that need to be adhered to. So a lot of the kind of guidance and what I would say is principles that people would expect to follow as good security practice is issued as advice by the National
Mhm.
Cybersecurity Center. So there are many good examples of this. So, for instance, there has been a lot of work around making security more usable. So, for example, passwords. Passwords are a big issue always. And sort of the guidance issues from National Cybersecurity Center, has kind of made a lot of difference across the UK to individuals and businesses. There are also particular requirements that they can provide. For example, there is the Cyber Essentials framework, which is a set of 5 controls that are specifically targeted to improve baseline security
Yes.
and protect organizations against what you would call commodity level attacks. Okay, they're supposed to be low cost. They're supposed to be binary, and of course there are sort of arguments about whether there should be more, there should be less, etc. But they are very useful. In the UK, while we are no longer in the EU, we have the EU equivalent of the Networked Information Systems Directive, NIST directive. And again, the National Cybersecurity Center provides the cyber advisory advice framework. I think it's called CAF, and I forget the exact detail, which is really about operators of critical infrastructure as to what are the kind of principles they should be following. So I think the distinction between the UK and the US is that the US frameworks, and I love them, but they are quite prescriptive. They say it must be X, Y, Z. The UK, the approach is more principles based. If you are meeting these principles, we don't really mind how exactly
You do it.
what controls are you using or what mechanisms are you using. If the principle is being adhered to, then that is the way to go. So I think that's where the distinction comes between the UK and the
And I love
US.
that you brought that up about it's really the approach, right? I think like with science and mathematics, right? It doesn't matter if you were born in Japan and Europe, UK,
Mhm.
US. Math is a universal language, meaning
Yeah,
the numbers all add up, right? No matter which way.
yeah,
And then when you get to the sciences, it's the same science. Like science and fact is fact no matter
mhm.
what region or country you're in. Then when
Yes.
we start getting to technology and cyber and IT and all of these frameworks,
Mhm.
policies, regulations, standards that we all share the same goals. We want to keep our systems secure, but the approach may be slightly different for, the US versus UK versus Japan, Asia markets,
Yeah,
your EU. And that's what I love that we're all trying to make our systems secure, but we just have a different angle or approach of doing
yeah,
it. And you
yeah,
mentioned the essential five. In Australia, they came out with the essential eight. And just like you said, people debate, oh, you
yeah,
should have added this one and this one, or you should have threw this one away. Again, no one's ever going to 100% agree. But what we all can agree on is that businesses do something that's better than nothing. So we all
yeah,
can agree on that one.
yeah,
So I
yeah.
love that. Thank you for sharing that. I know I kind of threw a last minute question at you
No,
about
no, no,
what's the
no
equivalent,
problem.
but
Yeah,
in every country region, they do have their equivalent of a
yeah,
NIST of a standards because
yes, yeah,
those those government entities for every other country, they have to consider their laws and their regulations and their policies. And a great example I used to talk to people about, they're like, well, why doesn't everybody in the world do it like we do in the US? I said, look, in the US, we're still a mess. We can't even get privacy right because we have sector-based privacy laws, privacy
yeah,
for healthcare, privacy for, financials. We have all these laws, and other countries are the same way. They have all their laws as well. And then when we do business with another country, that's where we have to come up with these big agreements like safe harbor laws, right? And the
yes,
biggest thing I talk to people, they're like, okay, so what's the big deal with safe harbor? I say, well, here's the number one problem when the lawyers get involved with one word can be different to an American than to a Brit than to someone in
mhm,
a European. And that one word in safe harbor is adequate security safeguards. The word adequate means something different to a German, to a Brit, to an American. And it's
yeah,
astounding what that one word is.
mhm,
And it's
yeah,
individual based. But like I said, that's part of the challenges of us all having to work together and come together and
yeah,
have these
agreed.
discussions, have these debates, have these committees and forums and technical working groups. And I think that's what we continually need to have. Like when we're dealing with AI, I hope that we don't have all these sector-based laws and silos between companies. And I hope we can all come to agreement, like with the ethics involved with AI systems and the development and the guardrails. I hope that we can have good discussions on this.
Yeah,
I know we could talk technical stuff for hours and hours, Professor, but I do want to go into a part of the podcast where I do this, where I ask a rapid fire bunch of questions, which is all for
okay,
pure fun, for some little bit of levity, as I call it, because we've been talking tech, 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 tech. So if you're humoring me, I have a couple rapid fire questions for you.
sure,
All right, no
sure,
right or wrong answer. So we're going to
okay.
start off with, is a hot dog a sandwich?
Oh, um, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it is in a piece of bread, covered on both sides. That's
Okay.
the definition of a sandwich.
Hey, there's no
So,
right or wrong
yeah.
answer. So,
Although the Earl of Sandwich might disagree with that, but
well, you talk about disagreements. This one's going to split the room. Star Wars or Star Trek?
ooh, am I allowed to go rogue and say Babylon 5?
Oh,
Uh,
you could go rogue.
having convinced my colleagues that in our new Linux platform we should name tools after Babylon 5, and there is a tool called Zathrix, which is after Zathras, who was keeper of the great machine. So I think I would be doing a disservice if I chose
Okay.
either of
Hey,
Star
you're the
Wars or
first
Star
person
Trek.
to go rogue. So I
Yeah,
love that.
yeah,
Babylon
yeah.
5. So here's another one. Cake or pie?
Oh, pie,
What
definitely
kind of
pie.
pie?
Oh, oh, that's a. That's a challenging one. I would say, ooh, it depends whether sweet or savory,
Okay.
right? So I think in terms of sweet, you can't
Well,
beat a
you
good
are in the
apple pie.
UK, and
Yeah,
pies can be very
yeah,
savory.
yeah,
Yeah, you got all
yeah,
kinds of
yeah,
pies.
yeah. But you can't beat a good apple pie, is what
Okay,
I would
good
say.
apple pie.
Yeah.
Hot or cold apple pie?
Oh, hot
Hot
apple
apple
pie
pie.
with some nice ice cream on the side. So
Good.
yeah,
All right, so
yeah.
here's a good one. What has been the most favorite book of yours that you've read of all time? And what was the last book you've read?
Oh, there is. Oh, choosing a favorite book is hard. I mean, I'm sitting, my bookshelf is right behind me, and so on. I think, given the kind of things that we are talking about, the first one that comes to mind is Ray Bradbury's Fahrenheit 451. I absolutely
Classic.
love it, and it's a book that it's just sitting right behind me over there, and I've read
It's
multiple
kind of a
times.
book of books.
Yeah, absolutely. It is, absolutely fantastic. And my children are sick of me telling them that they should read it. So, and they haven't yet.
Young people,
Um,
you need to read that book. It is a classic for a reason. So,
Absolutely. And the most recent one, actually, to carry on a theme, I've read is Hugh Howey's Wool, which is part of this Silo trilogy. And I'm right now actually reading the second one. But if you don't know it, it's been made into a big budget show by Apple as well. But yeah, no, so I've just finished reading the first one, and it's also
okay.
quite
Have you
quite
watched the
interesting.
show?
Only in part because I want to read
Okay.
the books first. I'm always a fan of the books, and I will then watch the show and obviously complain about it that it's not true to the books. So
So I don't know what this phenomenon is called. I'm sure there's a name that I can't
mhm.
remember right now. But there's a phenomenon when you read a book, your
Mhm.
imagination creates the visuals and the characters for you.
Yeah,
When I was a child, I read Lord of the Rings almost every year, and I
yeah,
loved that series, right? And
yeah,
so then the movies with Peter Jackson with a phenomenal cinematic achievement,
yes,
filming all films at the same time, delivered what I would call a near perfect trilogy. But then
yes,
once you've seen Elijah Wood, you see Ian McKellen as these
yeah,
characters, the problem is once you watch the film, it supplants the vision of the character you once read. I forget what this phenomenon is called, but I cannot, for the life of me, imagine what Strider Aragon looked like before I watched the
yeah,
film. Now it will always
yeah,
be,
yeah,
Viggo Mortensen, and then
yeah,
Gandalf will always be Sir Ian
yeah,
McKellen.
yeah,
So
yeah,
that's why I asked
yeah,
if you watched the,
yeah,
the series
yeah,
Silo, because
yeah,
has it
yeah.
supplanted your images of the characters?
No, and I mean that's why I don't want to right now because I want to just kind of enjoy just kind of imagining what this world looks like and so on. So, but I will admit I've seen some of the first season, but I stopped. So
Okay,
yeah,
so
yeah,
that's probably good.
yeah.
And folks, and please send me those book links. Anytime you have to send the links, I'll
Sure,
put them in the
sure,
description so that
sure,
people can click on those. Um,
sure.
I know that there's, with these companies you run, being a professor, all the work and research that you do, you're a very busy man. But what a lot of professionals I find is that yet, what as busy as you can be, you still make time to, maybe donate your time to causes, nonprofits, charities, volunteer work,
Mhm.
whether you squeeze it in nights and weekends or on holidays. But are there any nonprofits, volunteer work, charity work where you either give your time, energy, or money to, or just simply you just want to say, hey, I just want to shine a light on the great work this organization does because they deserve to have a little bit more attention in this world? So this is an opportunity for you to talk about anything that's near and dear to your heart. And again, even if you hadn't done
Mhm.
any work into that or donated to it, if it's just something you really believe in their cause, it could be anything. Is an opportunity to talk about nonprofits and volunteer work.
So it's something that we do, and I'm involved. I'm actually wearing the hoodie right now. So
Oh,
it's a
okay.
program of privacy clinics. So we started talking about this about privacy, and it's a program of privacy clinics that we run. We go out and work with community organizations. So these are grassroots community organizations. They may be working in areas where people are socioeconomically disadvantaged. These are organizations that may be supporting victims and survivors of domestic violence, organizations that maybe sort of supporting people with disabilities or the elderly and so on. So we go and run these privacy clinics where we are there. People come, they bring their problems. problems, and we advise them on how to address those problems, and also signpost them to other support, for example, if they need support from police or social services. And this is really, I mean, it is sort of part of the work, but a lot of the work happens with people volunteering their time across our team. So students, staff, postdoctoral researchers, and the clinics can either be kind of very, very formal. So you go and you really have like a doctor's clinic. You go, you get triage, you go to see a consultant, and so on. But they can also be pop-up clinics where we are really in community centers. So one of my favorite examples of this is, we went and ran one where we were generally on a table between a hair braiding stall and a face painting stall, right?
Okay.
But people are still coming to us and talking to us about their problems. And that is really, generally one of the sort of, most interesting parts of, what we do. And the problems we hear about and deal with are kind of totally varied. So they can be all the way from no points for guessing passwords. Okay. People have loads of problems with passwords, right? And you might say, oh, passwords are a kind of, the problem that we talk about all the time. But these are the problems that people face all the time.
Yeah.
So helping people
Regular
understand
people, normal
using
people.
password managers, two-factor authentication, we're very happy to do that. So they go all the way from there to really, really complex ones where people are dealing with, for example, two-factor stealing malware on their phones, or having stalkerware on their devices, or concern that they have sort of potentially victims of fraud and so on. So there is a
Yeah.
whole range of things that we come across, and myself and the colleagues and the volunteers who work on this, we really, really very much like doing that. But the key is that we work with organizations and communities. So it's not just like, we turn up and say, hey, we are academics, we know how to solve your problems. The on the ground organizations help us understand what the issues are, and they also provide the additional support, for
Yes.
example, which we can't provide.
Well, please provide me the socials and the websites and
Sure.
information. We'll
Yeah.
also include that below.
Yep.
Uh, Professor, I know we could talk. Again, I want to be respectful of your time, but what I like to also do is I like to give all my guests kind of the final word. So if there's any statements you want to make about any things in cyber technology that someone watching, a lot of what my goal of this podcast is to kind of,
Yeah.
speak. I know a lot of folks, well, I've seen these podcasts are like, well, we kind of already know why. But it's not only just for cyber professionals to get an insight into like the things we talked about, privacy and laws and so forth, but it's also for that person watching is like, I don't know if I want to get into cyber and I'm on the fence and either they're mid-career, maybe they've been working 5, 10, 15 years and they kind of feel like they hit the ceiling in their career, they can't really advance and they maybe want to try something new, or maybe it's a high school, college dropout that gave up on their degree dream and says, "Well, I need a job. I heard cyber's always hiring, but I don't know if I'm going to be that. I'm not that technically smart." Is an excuse I get a lot from folks. But what would be a statement or guidance you would give for those folks, and then any other statements that you want to make? This is your time.
Okay. Well, I mean, I think the one thing I would say is that, cybersecurity is all around us. And you'd expect me to say that as a professor in the area. But generally, I think from my standpoint, and I often say this, and people who heard me say this will say he's repeating this, but there are two big challenges that face our world. One is of sustainability. How do we actually not, exhaust our natural resources and destroy this planet on which we live? And there are lots of good people who are doing good work on that. But the other really is cybersecurity, because without the first, we don't have a planet. But without the second, we have no trust, okay, in the infrastructures that we use every day. So really, there is a great value in working in this area. But the other thing also is that cybersecurity is really broad. I come from a technical background and I love doing technical work, but I also do, work that is less technical. But we need people who understand how people use technologies. We need people who understand law. We need people who understand, risk management. We need criminologists who understand how to deal with cybercrime, right? And so on. So it's such a diverse field that there are so many different pathways into cyber. Now, we have to be careful. It's not, so people often say also, oh, cybersecurity is not really a technical problem. Of course, it's a technical problem, but it's also not just a technical problem. You need both. Okay, you need the technical and the kind of what you would call socio-technical side of it. So there are many, many pathways into cyber. So if you are interested, go for it. you'd expect me to say it, but go to things like CyBOK. There is no barrier to entry, right? We have these little podcasts, 20 minutes, sorry, plugging a different podcast on a
No, no, it's
podcast,
okay.
maybe
It's
not good
okay.
form, but
No, no.
they're 20 15 to 20 minutes podcast. You can hear about all the possible different flavors of cybersecurity and decide, do you want to go and work in forensics or do you want to go and work in risk management, for example, right? And then go and read more about those, go try out some of the resources. All of this is for free. You don't have to
Love it.
pay anyone to do anything, right? And once you know and you want to go deeper, then go and get some formalized
Mhm.
training so that you can have the credentials to be able to get jobs and so on. But the entry into this has to be free. And I think to me, that is the kind of big thing. We have to lower that barrier to entry. And I think if we do, we will hopefully address some of this cyber workforce gap that we regularly talk about.
Well, Professor, well said. I want to thank you so much for being part of the Top Cyber Pro podcast. You've been a wonderful guest. And again, please, when you release another foundation or any news that, please open invitation to come back again and speak
Okay.
about any
Yeah.
topic in the future.
Okay.
So thank you
Yeah.
so much.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.